Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Unit Masters Cohort 7. We're today at Wednesday Crypto Coaching, and we have two assignments for today. So in this week, we're speaking about blockchain incentive alignments. It has two parts. One is like proof of stake, proof of work, and the other one is talking about governance mechanisms and decentralized autonomous organizations. And for today's session, we'll actually do two breakout rooms. So for the first breakout rooms, we'll talk about the first assignments where we ask you to, just 1 second. Because I think we shared not the right link in our Telegram group. So some people were asking, let me just share the right link. For today's session, in the first assignment, we asked you to pick a project from CoinMarketCap and have a deeper dive into their mechanics, how they're working, how their community is built, and in particular also how they do like their consensus mechanism. And I think it would be good that in the first breakout room, we'll have some time for you to discuss in your little groups and share with each other your insights. And then in the second group, in the second breakout room, we'll talk about decentralized autonomous organizations. It's been a big trend for the past few months, and there have been a lot of development. And maybe some of you have also looked into that side of the assignment. And then we come together again for a common group debrief, if that makes sense. So I think for the breakout rooms, we will have groups of 3 or 4 so that enough people have time to speak. If you haven't had the chance in your group, like if nobody had the chance to really do the assignments, then just take the time to, do it while you're there, like, split up, do each person like, 5 minutes of research and then come together and discuss. So we will close the breakout rooms after 10 minutes. So you have 10 minutes to like discuss the different assignments. The assignments, you can find them actually in your email or on the course platform, if you like. So you see again also all the questions, if that's fine. I will also copy them and put them into the chat box. I stopped the recording so the editing team doesn't have to cut out always the 10 minutes.
Got it. Okay. So I was saying, I want to tell you a little bit of what our working group was discussing. So we picked Solana, which is a blockchain that is like popular, but not like the most one and recently there was a very big increase in the price. So we want to understand a little bit of what Solana is doing differently. So we are at the part like understanding what exactly they do, and one of our members mentioned that they have the proof of history, which work in a way that have to save time, and that's one of the main difference in terms of the speed, because that's let's say their focus is on, I think they were able to deliver 65K transaction per second. And then we are the part where we're discussing token allocation, and it's pretty cool that they have a percentage for like community activities, for the developer, for the foundation. One thing we can like discuss, but we didn't have that much time, is that we have some token allocation for strategic and validated sell. And then community activities, not exactly sure what are the activities is about, but we're finishing at that part. Yeah, they basically that's it.
Thanks a lot. How do you get in general information about the token allocation, for example? Where does one go and look for that kind of information? Anybody know? Like, how did you find out their Solana's token allocation split?
So basically Google.
Yeah. Are there any resources that any of you in the team or in general in this group know that you can point us towards? Saw something in the chat, the Fuzzy Rebel. No, that was not Binance Research. Okay. There's also, exactly. So typically each of the centralized exchanges, they typically have also a section on it. I also shared in the chat, and I will share it again. This is from our mentor, like Zeb from the Unit Masters broader community. He created that wiki together with other people. I think I can share with you real quick, where they already pre-screen a number of projects. And then there you can do it yourself. Like you can search for a lot of different token projects, and then can see what kind of tokens, and then you can look into like what their community came up with when they looked at the projects, some questions and so on and so forth. But it's quite helpful. And then you typically also see a token allocation. Let me just check, because I've never checked for Solana, for example, on their wiki. So we can check together. And you can basically see different chapters, right? What's the history, any kind of exploits or audits they had, and so on. So it's like a Wikipedia, but I think it's community-based. So of course, when you look at different projects, look at different sources, obviously, and also the main resources, and also have a look at their Telegram community, and so on the main website. And then here you can see everything that you can see in general, what people think is important to know. And then typically there should be a section on the token allocation too, and also the staking here. Exactly. I don't really see the coin distribution here. No, it's set token allocation somewhere. Ah, yeah, exactly. That's what Min Huang already mentioned. Finance research, and then X% here and there and there. And obviously everything is stated as in the token project stated that, and sometimes also have to check back then. Solana, for example, was a little bit in criticism because sometimes the numbers didn't add up. So always like double check with what the team said and then what happened and also what the blockchain says. Okay, then somebody mentioned proof of history. Exactly, you mentioned proof of history is something that they brought to the market. It's still, Solana is still a proof of stake blockchain, but they also invented this kind of proof of history, which is not a consensus mechanism in itself, but it's kind of a way to track. I actually wouldn't know how to explain it in a simple to understand way, but we had a talk at World Solana Forum where one person spoke about proof of history. So when you go on YouTube, you can check the proof of history video or check other videos about proof of history, how it actually goes. So this is, for example, the Unit YouTube. We have Unit Masters playlists where you see the different previous speakers. We see Zap is like the founder of this crypto do-it-yourself wiki research. He did some crypto workshops for previous batches, and we recorded them so that he doesn't have to come each batch and do the same workshop again, but you can always watch them. So there's the do-it-yourself. And in this playlist for World Solana Forum, for example, oops, this is just me, but there should be different videos, and you would see a few people in the community have contributed a little bit of knowledge to that. And this is like the video, I will copy it, where Ola, who's also part of the Unit Masters community team, is explaining the Solana cryptographic proof of history concept in a more understandable way than I would be able to do that for you guys. So I will share the link here. Exactly. Just important to note that proof of history in itself is not a consensus mechanism. I think that's what I wanted to say when I mentioned that. Okay, I think maybe we can go to the second breakout rooms now, and I'll make new groups so you meet new people. You will have 10 minutes again to discuss, and you can either discuss, different use cases again, like the old question, or you can discuss the decentralized autonomous organizations, because this was just a small subset of the assignments, and I'm not sure everybody had the time to do their research on decentralized autonomous organization. So if you've done so, then it would be good. Like if anybody from the team has done so, then it would be good that they explain to the others what they found out. And if they haven't, then it's fine, then just talk about the other use cases that you were talking about earlier. And then we wrap up together, and if anybody has any questions or want to share something with the entire community, that's then the place to do so. Breakout rooms. Recreate. I make a bit bigger breakout room session groups, right? So if somebody in the breakout room has done some work, please share in that 10 minutes, and also make sure everyone who did work gets a chance to share their work. 10 minutes, open rooms. Okay, welcome back everyone from the breakout rooms. Hope you had a good discussion. Now we have like a few minutes, 8 minutes to wrap up our discussion. I'd love to hear one or two sharings about new learnings that you had about DAOs. And then we maybe have a little bit of time to answer some questions that were still open. For example, from the first breakout discussion where Minhuang asked, what conclusions can we get actually from going through their token allocation, like of a project such as Solana? Anybody want to answer that question? Anybody got some ideas?
So let me jump in on that one then. So is the question, what type of conclusions can we draw on token allocations?
Exactly. Why would somebody look at that when they look at a token?
So a lot of them would be, so for example, Cardano had different token allocations of their token ADA to different parties, and Cardano is slightly different from most in that they've got IOHK, which is the sort of development side, and then they've got a company called Emergo, which is their like commercial business, the sort of the marketing arm, if you want to call it that, and then they also have the Cardano Foundation. So it's like a three-pronged management structure, if you want to look at it like that, and they had different distributions of their token. And what would happen is you'd say, let's say there's 10 tokens, and you'd say, okay, in the first year we will allocate 3 tokens to the developers, and if they achieve X, we will allocate another 3. So looking at token distribution can give you an idea of how the organization is planning on funding themselves, and also like a sort of a measure if they're actually doing what they say they're going to do, and are they taking the funds for the applicable resources that they spent.
Yeah, you can basically look at the allocation. There's no right or wrong, right? There's not the gold standard, let's say in crypto, where you say this is the right ratio of how do you allocate tokens across the people who give funds, and also looking forward, how you're going to plan to mint the tokens and give to whom. But typically you would see that like community-driven projects, they try to reserve a lot of tokens to distribute at later stage and early stage to their community for incentive mechanisms, for content creation, for doing work on the project, and so on. You can see some projects keep a lot for their own founders team. You can say this is good or bad. If you come from traditional VC, you would say, actually, if the founders don't keep at least 50% of the project, then you don't have enough skin in the game. How would you trust that this token team would then, this founders team would keep with the project and make sure that the project is a success? When we look at the token world and we look at a decentralized way of managing multiple stakeholder environments with lots of contributors, you would maybe think, if the founders of a project keep 50% of the project, then how do we have enough incentive for others to join in and support growing the project across the globe? So there's different ways of looking at it, but it always just makes sense to compare different projects and try to see, okay, why do they have comparably high amount of tokens allocated for legal, or 0% for legal, or whatever, and then look a bit deeper. And then you kind of get a feeling for how are people in the ecosystem who are building the different projects thinking about what will happen in the future and what will they need to keep resources and transfer. So just another layer of gathering information. So let's maybe look at the DAO things. So we had this kind of resources for you prepared. What is actually a DAO, like a short reading, and then also a video like crypto workshop with Zep, and also a database. Anybody want to share what they talked about in their discussion rooms, or any kind of insights that will help the entire learning community here to learn more about DAOs? You had a look at any of the DAOs? Yes, thank you, Ignacio.
I always tried someone else speak because I've been speaking a lot of sessions, but okay. So we talked about ENS DAO, that is the Ethereum name service that recently came out. They made a huge airdrop, yes. And they are trying to make this decentralized autonomous organizations towards the different laws that will apply to the governance of these names, and also splitting the utilities that this ENS token can have, and having voting for different constitution laws that they're making within the organization. So one of the things that arise during our conversation was that DAOs looks like great, this decentralized organization where everyone can vote, but also arise that it's most likely great for some things, but not so great for others. Like, for example, Gareth threw an example that was like an electric car company. You might want to get only engineers that know about that subject voting, and not every shareholder that could be, I don't know, like a biology teacher or something that is not exactly towards electric cars. So DAOs could work for some things. For example, charity, we thought it was a very good thing, that a DAO towards like a fund of charity to decide where the funds should go. And the last thing was about politicians, for example. It could be that each politician that is chosen within a country has its own DAO of voters that can decide in which direction that politician should vote regarding the laws that he has to vote. So if he does not complies towards what the DAO is doing, he could be removed. So we would have better representativity within the Congress, because people could actually help the congressman to know what the people want for each law he's voting, or something like that.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, DAO is up and coming. A concept where you hear more and more about. People think in general that's maybe a future form of global way to organize certain types of assets and certain types of projects together and coordinate them, not only on the creation side, but also on the value allocation side. I want to show to you also a way to look into it, because I know obviously we are doing everything. It's just, you know, that we're doing is super on the surface level, but we just want to give you the context around the buzzwords, and then what interests you, you can always look deeper. This is like an introduction program to blockchain, right? So for example, when you want to search DAOs, typically what I recommend personally, just look at an ecosystem map, as you've already done that in the past week for the different ecosystems. Also, the DAO has a landscape, right? There are providers in the market who produce tooling or operating systems, like software basically for DAOs to operate, because DAOs need to do voting and so on. Like Ignacio already said, there's people who, like, as a collective that is spread across the globe, that doesn't really have a lot of hierarchy as of now. People still need to vote on something, right? They have a human consensus model, apart from just the protocol consensus model that you've seen with proof of work or proof of stake to make sure that the ledger has integrity. Then in DAOs, how do you make sure that voting and decisions are made in the way, in the interest of a collective that has been loosely put together? So there's some tooling and so on methods. Then there's DAO. So these are the DAO operating systems. Basically, they provide things like modules that you can integrate if you run a blockchain community and want to do some kind of governance mechanism. Then there's DAOs, like people who come together to pool their funds, to invest into projects. There's a lot of them. So actually now you have like DAOs that invest into longevity research, DAOs that invest into saving gorillas, forest trees, and so on. Everything is popping up, DAO. You will hear that a lot. Then there's DAOs where people come together who just collect NFTs or other arts objects and so on. They're all called DAOs, so it's kind of currently emerging like mushrooms, actually. Then there's DAOs that just provide protocol services, like decentralized lending and anything like DeFi, decentralized finance projects. And we'll look into decentralized finance actually next week in week 4. Then there's like service DAOs that provide like some services for the ecosystem. Social DAOs, it's more like social media, community tokens, and so on, and media DAOs. And in each of these DAOs, there's different levels of how you can participate as a community member. And some pay you for your contribution using some kind of bounty systems. Others don't, because they're just like, hey, everyone can be part of the DAO, but not everyone. Everyone can buy the token, maybe if they have a token, but not everyone can receive tokens just for exchanging labor to their work. But you can always buy into the DAOs if they are openly listed in any of the decentralized exchanges. And that Here's a list. For example, we included that in our 6 weeks program as a resource. This is for Ethereum. It's called DeepDAO. There's a list or a dashboard of all the different DAOs that are built on the Ethereum blockchain. Like you already know, most of the DAOs, like in the blockchain world currently, all the blockchain ecosystems are still isolated, even when there's a lot of movement to make it cross interoperable, but we're not there yet as an ecosystem. So here you see all the DAOs that are built on Ethereum blockchain. You can see, you know, how much, I guess, market cap they have. Like, I just want to go back. Sorry, clicked on thing. How much money went into their smart contract address, how much went out, how many members they have. And you have to look into the definitions of like, how do they define all of these things? What kind of proposals are they making for the community to vote on? How many voters participate, and then some voter participation KPI. So there's more and more of these dashboards for different ecosystems coming up. You just need to do a little bit of internet research if you want to look for information. This is, for example, when we go back to tool providers, Snapshot DAO is for a snapshot is, for example, a voting system that enables these kinds of DAOs to do decentralized voting. So when you go to Snapshot, for example, we heard about Ignacio's that there's this ENS, like Ethereum name server. It enables you actually to buy, like, for example, if you were Ignacio and you wanted to buy an ETH address, you can buy ignacio.eth. And then this address is like basically your domain. So it's called Ethereum name service. Like we buy web addresses, you can now buy Ethereum addresses that are linked to you and you own them forever instead of just renting. Or I'm actually not sure, maybe you also have to rent. And then basically you can use the snapshot tool then to vote on different community proposals. And you will see, like, it all sounds very, very promising, but on the other hand, when you look at the real data of how many people really vote and so on, we can see it's still very early stage, the entire industry. So all of you who now learn about DAOs and so on, there are people who've been working on DAOs for many years, but in terms of mainstream adoption, this is still a very new topic. And there's a lot of things still to be developed and built, thought processes, tools, education material, and so on. So if you feel like, wow, this is where I love to contribute, or so, have a look at like the materials we put online and with any of these kinds of DAOs. If you're on Ethereum, like here's a list of all of them, but all the other ecosystems also have their own DAOs. I think that's about basically what we tried to convey for today. It's been kind of a dense week. Next week, we will actually look into projects and the decentralized finance part, or the gaming, like use cases of, I would say, parts of the industry where there has been a lot more traction, and some other parts of the ecosystem, you know, they're still in super early stage. Tomorrow, we will have a speaker from Shapeshift. Shapeshift was like a decentralized exchange before there were many other decentralized exchanges. So they were quite a pioneer. And then they were a legal entity in the US. And now they decided to become a DAO. So what they're going to do by the end of the year is dissolving their legal entity, creating a foundation, I think, and then putting parts of the funds into the foundation so that the foundation can like rule over certain decisions, and the rest of the employees will be let go. So they're kind of becoming a DAO. And this is quite interesting. You can ask the speaker about what's happening. It's quite a new movement. He will work with the Shapeshift Foundation later, once Shapeshift has become a DAO. And this is kind of pioneering in the market. I think it's one of the newer use cases. I haven't seen any other use cases where it has really worked. And then we can ask the speaker like expert questions if you've become an expert by tomorrow. Feel free to come in and ask everything, because then you get like, you know, firsthand insights from people who are actually working on building these kinds of ecosystems. So thank you all for joining. Please don't forget to answer like the weekly survey, so you can document like your learnings. You get a copy of the email, so you over time can also document your own answers, because by the end of the 6 weeks program, we will ask you to recap also your learnings from the different weeks so you can apply for certification. Thanks, and see you again tomorrow or next week. Bye, everyone.